Greetings, listeners. This is Silverdusk, your new GM for our story here for Fate's Rest. I will be running and going through this story and playing with a group of friends. And the story for this one will be the Fateless. So we'll go into more detail about that as the story progresses, and you'll learn more about these Fateless and their crew and the world that we're in. And speaking of the change of GM, we also, as everybody has probably heard of all of the fiasco that had happened with the old game system that we were using. And if you haven't heard of it, well, I really want to live under this. I really want to join you in your living under a rock. But on a serious note, if you haven't heard of it, look up all of the stuff going on about the OGL. It is a sticky situation. It's not really good for anybody, I don't think, other than competitors and those of us who are now going to branch out even more than we have in the past. I know I've dabbled in a couple other systems as I've played, and now part of this adventure is us changing to the Pathfinder system for my campaign. We're playing second edition Pathfinder, so I hope you will enjoy our story as we evolve. And there's probably going to be a couple moments where we're going to not know how stuff works, and we're not familiar with the rules, because we're all pretty new to it as well. So I do hope that it's not going to be too difficult to listen to, and we will try to include cuts and stuff, so it's not just us digging through rule books and try to figure out what exactly things happen. Keep that, in the background a little bit. And there might be a little bit of looking stuff up, but we will definitely do the same thing we've always done, kind of inform you about what the spells do, what different feats do, what different things do, and try to learn along as we play. And then we're also learning as you're learning. So it's going to be a very interesting little situation there. And with that change as well, because Tex has his own world that he has built and his characters that he works with, and he has tweaked and he's mastered and written. We're going to go into a world of my making, which is what we will venture into here right after this little explanation. And the biggest thing with my world is we're going to do something that I think will be interesting, is a little bit of a spell instability process. It was a thing way back in the day. It's controversial for some of the old heads. Some of them loved it, some of them hated it. I think I'm going to do this. It's definitely a cut down version of it, so I think it's not going to be as painful to listen to and watch, but I do think it is going to be an interesting way to kind of have something in the world that's dynamic. So without further ado, we will go into the world intro for the world of Erdania, and the players will have bits of lore and stuff in their intros as we go through with our new friends and characters that I hope you all will enjoy. So, you join me here for this little story time, and you want to know about the world of Erdania. Well, I can say, the biggest downside is I ventured there, not really of my own volition. I mean, yes, I did decide to go, but it wasn't particularly what I would have liked to have gone and done. You offer a god to help out with making a new tavern, and you go and say, yeah, I'll help out your kids, and we can get a new tavern set up in a new place. Figuring, it's not going to be anything too ridiculous or too terrible. Some of the other worlds that I've seen through the doors are all fairly similar. But this new world he sends me to, get out there, get everything set up, and then realize, well, I no longer have any magical powers. They're all gone. Everything's gone. Everything I learned doesn't apply in this world. And, you'd think after helping him save the world and helping him with rectifying things with the creator of our world and everything like that. You know, you think you'd at least give me a warning that my magic isn't going to work there. But, that's besides the point. I did mention, though, that I did meet two of his children, is how he referred to them and they referred to him. They didn't look anything like him, so, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. You didn't hear me complain. You don't want me to complain about all this. You wanted to know about Erdania and Telendor and the Fateless, I guess. Well, I can tell you a little bit about Erdania, but I cannot tell you much more than what was going on with Telendor. Though I can give you a little bit of information that I heard from rumors from around the world of the other continents in the world itself. Since, you know, I was only at Telendor and the expansion to other areas was not happening while I was still in the employ of the gatekeeper. Speaking of, I think he still owes me some gold from that. I need to get with that. I need to get that figured out. So, outside of Telendor, some of the rumors I heard would have been interesting. You know, I cannot confirm if they were all real. You know, it's a drunken confessions of men and women who are, you know, possibly even trying to impress their bartender or trying to impress people around them with these stories of fancy and flight that they've heard and that they've supposedly seen. So, you know, kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I think I'll start with up in the northeast on a continent that was told to me was known as Kaysira. It is a place that their biggest thing that was supposedly the most crazy, most interesting thing about the entire continent itself was the fact that they had ships that flew. They just strap big balloons onto ships and they fly. Seems completely insane. Like, why would you have a balloon to fly a ship? We had a magical flying ship. It seems like, you know, why'd you cut out the magic part, or maybe we cut out the middleman? It just seems like a really weird way to go about it, at least from my perspective. Kind of like, you know, they flew without magic, but it's like, I don't understand that. And they used explosive powder for weapons, but apparently it frequently would wound and maim themselves, so it sounds like a rather poor investment for a weapon. And they had men and women who were made of metal and stone and wood, other materials to signify, I don't know, maybe a rank or some sort of other distinction or ranking of them, or I guess association or levels of them. And they had dead eyes made of gemstones. Supposedly they are a machine from a race that has long since departed the world. And part of that departation of the world is leaving behind their ruins and their soldiers and their weapons and their technology and toys and tools. But metal men who can walk around and see into different places sounds like hogwash. Sounds like a story that, you know, your elders of the village would tell the youngest to scare them to sleep at night, so they don't try to sneak out of the camp. Just seems like all idle fancy. Though in the southeast, that's also kind of around that same area, is a land that is a bunch of different countries that seem to be always locked into a fight and conflict of some sort or another. Some colonization and animals that walk and talk. That, I don't know, it seems like you need a lot of bathing if you had full fur, but maybe you'd be pretty warm in the winters. That might not be too bad of a thing to have. But yeah, supposedly also another place where everybody is situated and set up in ancient ruins of ancient civilizations that are no longer on the planet. They didn't have magic ships, however. They apparently did other things. And I guess the history of that was the advanced people had deals with devils and demons, and the debts came due, so they were just taken from the world. That's probably the worst interest policy on any kind of debt you could ever take. I don't think anybody should ever make a deal such as those. It seems like a really bad idea. But they all left all their advanced and special stuff behind. But of course, like I said, the gatekeeper didn't send me there. The gatekeeper said, also had mentioned that when I spoke to him about these, he said that the world there with the devil deals in the southern area, they use ships traditionally, the ones that sailed in water and sailing ships. Seems like it could use a little bit of extra magic and it could have had even better ships. But I digress. They use these ships to colonize and fight each other and expand their wars and conquest. So, sounds like a people you don't want to invite to any sort of holiday parties. And they apparently have problems with a lot of outsiders since, they're currently at war all the time with each other, and they always look at all their neighbors as foes to be fought with or even, eventually taken over, and who knows what else. Though, like I said, I would share with you some of the rumors that I heard. But for things that are not rumors, the world of Tillendor itself. It wasn't a very pleasant place, because magic, of course mine didn't work, but at least mine just didn't work. I could have had the luck of Lark, one of the, as I mentioned earlier, children of the gatekeeper. He had his magic. One of the first things he did when he showed up was went to use a spell and instead made himself invisible. So, was not his intended spell. So that was an interesting thing that I think, from what I've heard, is a long-standing problem on that continent itself. Though other than that, it's a place like any other, It's not quite as good as it is here at home, but there are things that were better. They have better problems, they have worse problems. There's problems at home, there's problems out in the world, wide world itself. So, yes, there was bad, there was good. Lots of beautiful places to go see, a lot of beautiful cities. Old mountainous regions, and I saw this really great lake that I would love to go to again, up in the mountains. But the world itself the world is pretty broken in many places, but Tillendor itself was very broken. The old gods wanted to hold power, and the new gods showed up, and between all of that, I guess some of these newer gods rubbed the old gods the wrong way, and it was just this same general nonsense that we had in around here with all the stories of the Gatekeeper and the Creator and the Leviathan and all of them. It seems like whenever you have beings of power and godliness, they, with all of their power, all of their strengths, all of their knowledge, they just can't seem to get along. So, we had these old gods, one of which apparently had a lot of problems with our god of most knowledge. This goddess was known as the Sisters, the goddess of life and death. Weird mix, I thought, when I first heard of it. Though, she did threaten the Gatekeeper that if he were to ever enter the world of Erdania, that she would destroy him. And that is, should destroy him for, I guess, violating the sacred cycle, whatever that means. So I don't know if the Gatekeeper was afraid of this goddess or if it was just a matter of convenience. I like to think that he was afraid of her. It just makes me feel better about the whole situation. So I don't know how all the scars got there in Tillendor. I just do know that magic doesn't work. Maybe it has something to do with that Sisters goddess. maybe that she was part of that catalyst. But there were areas that were nullification for magic, so they would just suck up all of the ambient magic in the area. Make your skin crawl, your hair stand up, just that itch in the back of your mind, give you a headache. Kind of like you wouldn't know that. Just kind of like when you're sick, just constantly. And then areas of amplification, which is the opposite, gives you more power and makes everything feel weird and just you feel unclean, like there's a staticky charge and a little jolt that follows you everywhere. I personally felt like those were even worse than the areas where no magic happened. A headache is one thing, but when your skin just feels like every slight touch is a slap across the face, or a tickle, it's not the best situation. But it's like, that's kind of the best way I can think of it, is if you're too warm or you're too cold, you can definitely fix one, but the other one you really can't fix. Then the other weird part about Tillandor, supposedly it's named after the greatest of all dragon kings. But for a land that's named after the dragons, I never saw any dragons there, so it seems like a really weird problem to have. I guess I should ask the gatekeeper about that situation. Maybe he might know. Though he might not be a god of knowledge on that area. He might be a god of no knowledge there. So, had the problem of magic. And apparently, it fell to the Fateless that we were going to speak about to fix this problem of magic. Set things aright. And bring the world of Tillandor back into some modern place. The different kingdoms of Tillandor didn't seem to like or care for the different Fateless themselves necessarily, but they lived in some sort of weird, peace isn't the right word, but they at least functioned as a group on this continent. If you can call it functioning, for the fighting and wars amongst themselves and other problems. But you did say you wanted to hear about these heroes. Yeah, the Fateless, right? That's right. They were called the Fateless. I can give you some basics before we're supposed to head in for dinner. Don't want to make your mother upset if we're too late. But the Fateless, they're blank slates in the tapestry of fate. That is why the gatekeeper and the, as they called them on that world, the agents of fate, which I guess I was also a part of. They don't have a space, they don't have a nature in fate, they have a flexible and morphable state and form, and they're not really attached to anything. But those people with this blank slate, they seem to always have abilities and some little eccentricities about them. Like one of the ones I met who claimed they were one of the Fateless. It was a gnome who absolutely insisted that they were a giant that was shrunk down. No matter how much you would tell them otherwise, no matter how much they drank, they always mentioned and stated that they are a giant that has been shrank into a gnome body. Seems like a really weird thing to lie about, but I don't think they were ever a giant. The reason why I knew they were Fateless is part of the tavern's magic allows them to access the tavern because they're of the Fateless. So it was a very limited clientele on this world. And part of the problem with the Fateless was that they drew the ire of certain individuals that were on the world. The biggest one would have been the Cult of the Weaver. Yes, that's the name that they chose for themselves. It's really ridiculous. Why do cultists always make ridiculous names for themselves? I absolutely do not understand. You know, why not be the cult of the tapestry or the, I don't know, the, what ours on this world was a rising sun. Like, who comes up with these names? Because they clearly are not paid enough to come up with good names. But these cultists believed that they could harness the souls of the Fateless and use them to reshape the world in their image, essentially create a new god of the world. And part of that reshaping of the world was to bring the Weaver back from their prison to correct and heal the scars of the world. Though what kind of good god would heal the scars and pains of a world but demand sacrifices of innocent people? I guess that's why they're a cult and not organized group. Or maybe even the organized groups are cults too, if you come down to the brass tacks of things. Seems like anybody who puts that above all else might be a little bit cultish. But the best stories of the Fateless that I had met while I was there was the group of heroes who actually healed the scars. They fixed the world. They fixed Tillendor. They were able to meet up in rather awkward situations and had interesting lives leading up to the fact, well, interesting might not be the best word for some, but what kind of good story doesn't begin with being in chains with your fellow adventurers and prisoners who are going to create legends? Isn't that one of the oldest stories in every book? Almost seems a little cliche. But I'll tell you about them tomorrow because I'm smelling something delicious. Let's go clean up and get something to eat. Yeah, it does smell really good. You promise you'll tell me? Absolutely, Sig. I'll tell you the story and I wouldn't miss it for any reason.